An entitled nephew tries to scam his uncle out of $800 by photoshopping an invoice that he had for his archery bow. But thankfully, I paid attention enough to know that something was really off, as I exposed this kid for the liar that he is and brought all of this to light for the uncle to fully understand. And I've honestly never been more disgusted by somebody's entitlement in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of context, I work at an archery store, and this story revolved around fixing a broken bow. Now, if you shoot a bow without an arrow, it's called a dry fire, and this is very bad. For a compound bow, the damage can be catastrophic. This surprises a lot of people, which is why dry fires are usually caused by beginners or family members that see the bow and then they play with it. They literally just don't know any better. Well, the uncle of this story did this to his nephew's bow, but luckily the damage wasn't too bad. The only thing that needed replacing was the string, so that's what we quoted the nephew for. He was going to get his uncle to pay for it, but he figured that while he was getting a new string, he'd also order some new accessories, so he asked us to add them to the quote. He said that he'd pay for them and collect them when the string was ready. Well, when the string arrived, we let him know. The day after, the uncle called trying to pay for it, and to my surprise, he called to pay for the whole order, but there was definitely funnier business going on here. So the uncle called in asking to pay for the invoice. I asked for the invoice number and the uncle gave it to me. He then said it's for $900. I clarified and said, "Oh, you're the nephew's uncle." He said, "Yes, I am. So I'm here to pay the $900. I took a moment and I asked him, "You're paying for the whole invoice? I mean, that's pretty generous." The uncle then said, "Yeah, well, I feel bad, so here's the money." After I took the payment, he asked me to include all the broken pieces when we ship the bow back. I said to him, "Okay, but it's only the string that needs to be replaced." The uncle took a moment and said, "Well, what about the limbs?" I said to him, "We're only replacing the string. Literally nothing else is broken." The uncle then says to me, "But it says right here on the invoice, replace the limbs for $800 and replace the string for $100. So I finally stepped in and I said, "I don't know what you're looking at, but the invoice here says accessories $800 and replacement string $100. Now, this guy did not believe me. He said to me, "What are you talking about? That's not right." So I clarified and I said, "No, it's definitely right. I'm looking at the invoice right now." The uncle then thought that maybe he was paying for someone else's invoice, but I said to him, "No, our invoice numbers match. Plus, you confirmed you're the uncle. This is the right invoice." The uncle took a pause, so I kept going. I said to him, "Well, your nephew purchased some accessories as well. That's why I was surprised you wanted to pay for it all." The uncle then said that there are no accessories on his invoice, just replacement limbs and the replacement string. And it was then that he was wondering why his was different. Now, I was a little confused at this as well, but after some silence, I realized what must have happened. I explained to him that I think his nephew photoshopped the invoice, and after a few moments of silence, we both came to that realization. I was honestly disgusted, but the uncle more so. He hung up to berate his nephew, and about an hour later, the nephew called and asked what I told his uncle. I replied by saying, "Your uncle asked me to send the broken limbs back to him, and I told him that we weren't replacing the limbs, and he figured it out from there." Now, his justification for all of this was honestly horrendous. He actually said to me, "Yeah, well, he stopped giving me birthday presents after I turned 18, so I figured that he owed me." And when I heard this, I just could not believe it. This guy thought he was entitled to receive birthday presents to such an extent that he was willing to scam a family member out of $800 just to make up for presents that he didn't get. After that, I called the uncle back and I told him what his nephew said, and honestly, he was not impressed. He then requested that I refund the payment, which I agreed to, after which I withheld fulfilling the invoice until it was paid for again. The next day, the nephew called and he asked me to remove the accessories from the invoice, which I did, and he ended up paying for the string himself. Now, I didn't hear from the uncle again, but considering the nephew ended up paying for the repair, I can only imagine that this guy definitely got his justice. Wow, that nephew is a piece of garbage. Can you imagine being so awful that you scam a family member out of $900? Like, first of all, that is an awful thing to do to somebody you call family. But also, can you imagine being that much of a jerk that you would throw your family member under the bus and try to get them on the hook for almost $1,000? Like, seriously, that is really messed up. Like, I'm really glad the original poster was paying attention to what's going on and had enough common sense to be like, wait a second, something is not adding up. Because what this kid tried to do is seriously uncalled for, and hopefully he got in trouble in the way that he should. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled dad laughed at a crying fast food employee, claiming that nobody nobody wants to work anymore and that she has nothing to complain about. And I'm honestly still blown away by his entitlement to this day. Here's what happened. Okay, so about 2 years ago, my father had surgery to get lung cancer removed. For reference, he smoked for 50 years. I flew in from out of state, and the next day, my mother and I drove to the hospital where he was scheduled for us to pick him up. This was an intense procedure where he had about 10% of one lung removed. 10 minutes out from the hospital, he calls my mom and tells her to pick up McDonald's and bring it to the hospital. A few hours later, he's allowed to leave, and on the drive home, he tells us that he wants to pick up KFC. Now, I'm driving with him in the passenger seat, so I pull up to the drive-thru and they take a while to take our order. When we pull to the window, there's a young teen girl standing there being yelled at by a guy who's similar in age. He screams that he quits and he storms out of the building. And it's right then that she bursts into tears and sobs for a few seconds before coming over to take payments. She informs us while openly crying that it will be a minute because she is alone. As she walks away to get the food, my dad says, "I don't know what she's crying about, but she isn't having as bad of a day as me." He then rants for the next 5 minutes about how no one wants to work anymore and how this service is unacceptable. He continued to rant about that girl and laugh at her over the next few days. Then he had the audacity to tell me a few months later that it seemed like I didn't really want to be there during that visit, and I'm honestly just so blown away by his entitlement. Seriously, it really sounds like your dad is a complete idiot. Like, this guy does not know what he's talking about. Like, why would he make fun of this lady who's clearly doing all of the work in the restaurant by herself? She has no one else to help her out, so she's probably overwhelmed. And he's really gonna sit there and be like, wow, no one wants to work anymore. It's like she does. She's doing the best she can. Literally, the only person helping her quit on the spot. There's not much else you can do about that. Like, that is seriously unfair. And it's also ironic that your dad is like, wow, it's almost like you didn't want to be there when I was mocking that service worker. And like, seriously, of course you didn't want to be there. Your dad was acting insane and treating this lady like garbage. So I truly hope you don't have to deal with your dad in that capacity any longer, because based on what you described, he sounds incredibly miserable. Am I the jerk for making things uncomfortable during my dad's engagement dinner by exposing him as the cheating jerk that he truly is? Because right now he is calling me a spiteful child, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my dad is a serial cheater. He cheated on my mom a lot during their marriage, and it came to light after she was diagnosed with brain cancer 5 years ago. My mom found out when she was terminal, and my dad's answer to this was to run away to his affair partner's house, leaving me and my sister to fend for ourselves and take care of mom. He then tried to get his way back in for my mom's last few weeks, and she somewhat gave in for our sakes, because she was worried that we would hate him if she didn't. But then when the end came along, he was with his affair partner. Now, when mom was gone, we refused to live with dad and his affair partner. We told dad that we were not going to let him act like nothing bad happened, and there was no way we wanted his affair partner to be our new mom. We ran away from home to get our way, and CPS got involved and decided that we should live with our maternal grandparents. But our dad was given visitation rights by the courts, so we have to see him one Saturday and one Sunday a month, but not overnight. Dad and his affair partner were on and off for a few years. We found out one of her kids was actually his, and that kid is 6 years old now. She also has an 8-year-old child from a previous relationship, which was right at the same time that she had the 6-year-old. So there's messy stuff on her side too. And honestly, we don't see or interact with them ever. My dad and his affair partner are now engaged, and they wanted an engagement party with family and friends, and dad insisted that we had to be a part of that. It happened on Saturday, and my dad made us use the engagement dinner as our visitation with him, but we tried to fight against it. So we went, but we weren't happy, and during the dinner, dad and his affair partner were talking about how excited they were to bring the family together. His affair partner was saying that she was so excited to officially be our parent and to have us come closer because of it. Now, their immediate families know the score, but not the extended family, and I think their friends mostly knew. They were saying how it was the most wonderful time and stuff like that, and then my sister and I started saying it wasn't for us, and then sarcastically said how we couldn't wait to be a family with my dad's affair partner that he was seeing all throughout my mom's cancer, and that my dad chose to be with her when his wife was dying, thus leaving his daughters alone with their dying mother, because he didn't even call our grandparents to tell them it was her final few hours. We also brought up that he had fathered a 6-year-old during his marriage to my mom. Now, this led to a lot of questions, surprise, and anger, the latter of which was directed at us. My dad and his affair partner were furious that we made the engagement dinner uncomfortable and asked us why we would do that. Well, my sister said that we are not going to pretend that we are happy for them or us. I said they forced us to be there, and we were clear that we didn't want to be, but they said that we behaved like spiteful children. So honestly, are we the jerks in this situation? Because at this point, we're so angry and we just don't know what to do. Okay, I think it's really funny that they say you're being spiteful children, because guess what? You are spiteful children, and with good reason. Your dad was cheating on your mother during her final hours. She has terminal cancer and this guy's running off with his affair partner. Like, that is so unfair, it's just disgusting. Your dad also made you go to this event, and he basically said, oh, this is gonna be our visitation time. So honestly, any kind of like blowback that he's receiving, especially after you and your sister told the truth, is quite literally his own fault. You didn't do this to him, he did it to himself. And I just don't see a problem with you being upset about this situation. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your dad and his affair partner absolutely had this coming, because the way he's treated this family is completely unacceptable. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would also be incredibly furious. An entitled couple stop on the side of the highway as I'm walking with my kid around my neighborhood, demanding that I get in their car as it's too unsafe for me to walk around. And I've honestly never been more creeped out by anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so a few months ago, it's cold and it's snowy, and I live in an area where Save the Children has an absolute chokehold on every business and person in town. I live in arguably one of the safest family-friendly areas, and this is especially true since the most recent violence and random crime was probably about 30 years ago. I mean, there are white picket fences, people still leave their doors unlocked. I think you guys get the picture. So I load up my toddler and I decide to go on a walk. We're both stir-crazy, stuck in the house all weekend, and finally there's a break in the weather. As I loop back on our conservative 2-mile walk, this car comes to a flying halt in front of us. For a better picture, we're walking on a bike and walking path that borders the local highway. The entitled couple of this story are literally blocking highway traffic with their car halfway in the shoulder. They then start screaming at me, hey, what are you doing? Are you okay? I pop out my Bluetooth headphone and I say, yes. They look at me again and say, are you okay? Why are you walking out here? Now, mind you, it's literally 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I chuckle uneasily, worried that a car will rear end them and fly into myself and my child. I say to them, yes, I'm fine. They say to me, are you absolutely sure? I say to them, yes, I'm on a walk. But they respond by saying, oh, it's too cold to walk. Why are you out here? But once again, I say to them, I can assure you that we are fine. Well, this is where it takes a turn. They look at me and say, get in our car. We can take you anywhere you need to go. You'll be safe with us. So I'm supposed to load my kid, my stroller, and myself into their crappy car on the side of an icy, snowy highway just to escape the fantasy boogeyman they think I'm fleeing from. I look at them and I say, I promise you we're all good. But they say to me, there are no houses around here. You and your child are safe with us. And this is all ignoring the fact that my house is literally half a mile away. I then just put my headphones in and I just kept walking. These entitled morons circled me 3 times on the highway, literally going back and forth. And it's truly the most bizarre and delusional interaction I've ever had with people like this. Because my area really obsesses with Save the Children and has no actual grasp on what a sketchy situation like that would actually look like, I can only assume that they thought we escaped some sort of like weird house, or these are just lazy entitled people who don't go outside and are shocked that a younger generation would want their kids to get fresh air. Okay, that is honestly like the craziest thing I think I've heard all day. Who in their right minds would stop on the side of the road and be like, quick, get into our car, you'll be safe with us? Like, that is definitely not gonna happen, and that's when I start running in the opposite direction. Or even like call the police, because that is super sketchy. Like, they're on a highway that's icy on the shoulder, and they're acting like, oh man, I gotta save these people. Like, you can't just do that. That's gonna make you look really creepy. So yeah, I think the situation is super sketchy, and those people who try to get you into their car should be lucky that this wasn't escalated. Because if you wanted to, you absolutely could have called the police on them. And in my opinion, I think that definitely would be justified. Am I the jerk for inviting a clown to my wedding and putting him in our wedding photos with me and my husband? Because right now, my mother-in-law is furious with me for allowing this to happen, despite the fact that me and my husband both agreed that we would enjoy this. And right now, as a result, I feel like I messed up in some way. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 29-year-old female, and I married my 31-year-old husband a few months ago. Neither of us were really interested in spending a boatload of money on a wedding that literally no one would actually enjoy. So we were super casual about it. The wedding was in the party room of a pizza place that we love, and for reference, it's in a recently renovated 19th century factory, so it's really cool looking. We also decided to let our friends and family bring their army of small children because of the pizza. And to entertain the kids, we decided to have a few carnival-themed games, as well as having some snacks available, but also we hired a clown to do some balloon animals. Now, I know this clown. He is a friend of my cousin's who has very good clown credentials. He was great with the kids. We had the bright idea to invite the clown to be in some of our wedding photos as well. Anyhow, I noticed my mother-in-law has been kind of distant since the wedding, but I didn't realize that she was upset with us until she came to dinner last night. We got the wedding photos and picked our favorite, which is the two of us looking at each other dramatically while the clown is standing next to us holding a big fake squeaky hammer like he was about to bonk my husband's head. We got it framed and we put it in the house. When my mother-in-law saw the photo, she just absolutely lost it. She blamed me for embarrassing her and continued to rub it in her face with the clown photos, and that I should have put my foot down and made sure her son had a classy wedding and not have one where clowns put on a show for you. My husband told his mom to leave, but I'm honestly kind of shaken. The feedback from other family and friends has been very positive, and I've had a good relationship with my mother-in-law thus far, so this really was a surprise. I know a lot of people say that the wedding is for the family, not the couple, which is something I took seriously until now, and I'm wondering if I should have considered my mother-in-law's feelings more when putting together the party. So honestly, am I the jerk for bringing a clown to my wedding? Because at this point, I really don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all. This wedding, in my opinion, is your business. So if you want to have like a carnival theme and have clowns and all this other stuff, then by all means, go for it. Like, this is a celebration of you and your husband's love. And if this is something that you enjoyed and you feel like it made you and your husband closer together, then forget what your mother-in-law thinks. She's also only upset because she didn't have the wedding that she wanted for her son, which, by the way, your husband agreed to this as well. It's not like you coerced him into doing this and he somehow just kind of gave in. Like, you both said, hey, this would be a lot of fun and we're all good with this. So if anything, your mother-in-law is a complete jerk. She came after you about something that both of you agreed upon. And in my opinion, her attitude towards you and your husband is completely inappropriate. I had one of the worst nights of my life as a server, as a family of 8 stole one of the reservations I had for another group, causing absolute chaos and giving me a massive headache the entire night. And I honestly hope nothing like this ever happens again. Here's what happened. So I work at a local pub, and we're currently experiencing some management issues that reflect our scheduling, and of course results in us being understaffed. Yesterday, I was working alone as I usually do on a Monday evening, and I was told not to have my on-call come in because they were not expecting it to be busy, which honestly was a big mistake. It's a beautiful day out. We just had the total eclipse happen, and many families had the day off for the event. So it was really busy from the get-go. Usually I start turning groups away, especially if they do not have a reservation, because there's only so many people I can serve, even if we have enough tables to seat every single person that walks in. So this man walks in and asks for a table for 8. I asked if he had a reservation, as I had one reserved at 5:45 for 7 people, and this guy decided to lie and take the spot. They sat in the spot reserved for another group that actually did call, and trust me, this created such a mess. And when I confronted the group about it, they just shrugged their shoulders and said that they always get in without a reservation, not even acknowledging that they stole the reservation from somebody else. I didn't kick them out because they had their drinks and I knew my boss would be upset, but it caused such a mess in my service that was already a mess because I was stressed out and alone. The table then proceeds to demand that I prioritize their food because they had kids who were very hungry, but I told them no, and that they had to patiently wait just like everybody else. They then demanded that I do a bunch of modifications for them, such as having the bacon extra crispy and that they have no ice in their water. And this is all when I had literally no time for them and a full restaurant to deal with. Anyways, they split the bill in 2 and they each tipped me $5 on their respectful $85 bills and proceeded to chew me out for being rude to them. Now, let me tell you something. I have never been this angry at a customer before because if anything, I did them a massive favor by letting them stay seated when I easily could have kicked them out. They didn't understand the concept of making a reservation, and nor did they understand that I was completely alone and that their demands were so menial and unnecessary. Moreover, they didn't even take ownership, nor even begin to understand that taking someone else's reservation is not only disrespectful, but also very rude. I wish I could have punched them in the face and really gave them a proper piece of my mind, and it just really reminds me of how much of an awful job serving can be. Honestly, that is so unbelievably toxic. Like, they literally just lied and took that spot, even though they knew that wasn't theirs and they didn't make that reservation. Like, just think about how that family feels who did reserve that spot, and now they have to wait like everybody else just to get a seat. Like, if I went out of my way to reserve a spot for me and my family, only to then roll up at the restaurant and find out that someone else took my spot, like, I would be super upset that and I probably would not come back. It also makes me wonder if there was some kind of name on the reservation list or something that you could like double check with. It seems like they heard that there's a 545 available and they just said, oh yeah, that's us. Like, wouldn't you ask for a name to like verify that reservation or something like that? So on that end, I think maybe next time ask for a name or something like that, or at least keep a lid on it when it comes to what reservations you do have available. Because clearly these people were looking for you to say something because they were ready to jump on that at a moment's notice. And the fact that they were so demanding the entire time and requesting all these specific modifications, that is like so obnoxious, especially because you could have kicked them out of the restaurant, and in my opinion, you probably should have. Like, these people probably ruined the night for a lot of people, including you. So for them to make these weird demands and then tip you this garbage amount, in my opinion, is just super toxic. And hopefully for the sake of you and your restaurant, these people never come back ever again. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.